Bishnoi belonged not to our times when we are fast losing every facet of our environment, trees, land, air, water, to human ignorance, apathy and greed. It was 1730 when Amrita Devi and 360 Bishnois gave up their lives to save the trees that the Maharaja of Jodhpur wanted to fell to build a palace. The love for earth and its nature is embedded in our culture, which we have turned a blind eye to, till a Greta Thunberg calls the young ones to wake up and help preserve their ecological future. So we are more than happy to immerse ourselves in Ganesh Saili's Wandering Through the Garhwal Himalayas, with its poetic language and pictures. Ganesh Saili, a photographer and mountain trekker, is perhaps the best person to draw our attention to what's threatening the delicate ecology of these mountains that stand like sentinels to the north of India. In conversation with him is Kiran Chadda, author of Dalhousie Through My Eyes, which is a pictorial history of almost 2 decades, 2 centuries. She has founded an NGO, Swachh Dalhousie, Clean Dalhousie. Pooja Marwa will also join this ecological conversation. She lives in Dehradun and is very familiar with Ganesh Saili's work and the terrain that we are talking about. So I invite Ganesh and Kiran Chadda and Pooja Marwa. Please come on the stage.
Hello and welcome to our session. This session is dedicated to Greta Thunberg for the wonderful work that she is doing to tell all of us what we are leaving behind for our children. Right here with us, Mr. Saili, whom I fondly refer to as North Star for reasons obvious. He is here to tell us about his wanderings through the Garhwal Himalaya, his being the operative word. There is a quote in your book, sir, that touched a chord. May I? You may break, you may shatter the vase, if you will, but the scent of the roses shall cling to you still. This incredible book will want you to run up to the mountains amidst the rain, the wind, the sleet and the snow. Also here with us is Dr. Kiran Chadda, feisty, vibrant, full of life. She believes that life is lived forward but understood backwards. And through Dr. Chadda's coffee table book titled Dalhousie, she will share small moments that have etched a memory deep in her heart. To move on, there is something very mysterious about the mountains. I'm sure all of you here can relate to that. The magic, the passion, the enigma. There is something that makes everybody from the plains rush up at every weekend or every chance they get. What is it about Kasauli that has all of you here today? I have to quote late Shri Khushwant Singh Ji on this one, because I don't think anybody can give us the reason better than he did. He once said that Kasauli is the place where kissing is always in season. I'm sure, thank you. I'm sure some of you would want to debate, but hear me out. There is a trail here called Gilbert Trail, also known as Lover's Lane. And I'm sure if you walk down that path at any time of the day or night, you would get a serenade by gorgeous birds. For all the gentlemen sitting here, there is a pun intended on that. So walk down that trail, have a nice walk. I'm actually referring, on a serious note, to the yellow-billed blue magpie that is very prevalent in these areas. Now, besides the kissing, the Kasauli brewery was originally owned by Edward Dyer, father of the infamous General Reginald Dyer. It's 100 years now after the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, and even a thought about that fateful day gives us all goosebumps. Mr. Saili here has a very interesting take on General Dyer's widow, whom he knew of in Missouri.
Oh, it was a very long research on the mountain that I had done a few books on Missouri. And during this research, I met this very nice watercolor painter, Jim Keelan. And slowly during the research, it fell together that his mother was General Dyer's widow, Jim Keelan's mother. And they ran that school in Missouri called Vincent Hill, which is now the Guru Nanak 5th Centenary School at the western end of town. And she probably went up there and married his father, who was then, later, written about by George Everest's diaries. He didn't like him at all. So he always said catty things about him, his father. He said, it's impossible to be more stupid than Keelan. And I said, who was this Keelan? And my research on the little place where I live in Missouri, interesting things fall together like a jigsaw puzzle. Things fall together, and this is just one of them, Pooja.
Thank you.
She lived up there and
Tell
died
us
up there.
about Mullingar. Who was Captain Frederick Young?
Oh, Frederick.
How did Mullingar in Missouri get its name?
Missouri got its name from the Mansour bush that grows up there, the Nepeland Coriana, which is growing in abundance there. It's also called the Mansour bush. So probably from Mansour you went to Missouri. The old-timers still call it Mansouri. The labour still that came in there, they say Mansouri ja rahe hain. Missouri nahi jata koi. And over the years, of course, we date back to 1815, the end of the Gurkha Wars. A lot of army personnel there, so ex-servicemen here. So this came at the end of the 1815, at the end of the Gurkha Wars, when General Jolo Gillespie came up into the valley of the Doon, if some of you are familiar with that area, came into the valley of the Doon, and the Gurkhas had been there 20 years in Garhwal and Kumaon, and they're getting rather cheeky, and they would make forays into the British outposts. And at some point, I guess, the East India Company had enough, and they said, let's go. And so they sent these troops, ki thode se Gurkha honge, inhe jara fix karke aana. They had no idea what they were going into. In this little place in Dehradun, there's a little hill called the Nalapani Hill. And on this little fort were a few Gurkhas, and there were women and their families. They were living, and mind you, they were not those massive stone fort, just a basic stockades, lakdi se, between bushes and those stones and sticks and stones and nothing else. These forts were made out of the General George Gillespie, hero of Jaffna. He came in and he said, let's go, fix them. The first day, without much checking out, he took his guns out and he attacked them, got shot, got killed. He was the first casualty of the Gurkha Wars, and then they said, we're up against a very brave race of people. So they stepped back, and what was supposed to last 3 days lasted 3 months. And they just didn't know what to do. They were up against General Balbhadrah, the Nepalese general. Small anecdote, if you permit me, that comes to mind is about this general one evening. He sends a letter to Balbhadrah saying, you better surrender, we are surrounded. So Balbhadrah looked at the letter and he says, not customary to disturb a general in the evening. And having said that, thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go on to Dr. Chadda, whose family has been in Dalhousie since the 1800s. Doctor, would you please tell us about the family and how they came there, and about your NGO called Swachh Dalhousie?
Let me first, in memory of Khushwant Singh, thank Rahul and Nilüfer for having me here. And I want to acknowledge the presence of my brother who's come specially, Major General Plaha, and all my Sacred Heartian friends and my batchmates. With that, I begin with Dalhousie. Dalhousie, my hometown, my love. In fact, Dalhousie and the quest for this book started not only as a pictorial history, but as a historical facts and figures, and through folklore and fables that I wanted to know what Dalhousie was all about. In fact, after my retirement, when I went back and I asked a couple of people, when did the municipal council start? Blank. I asked them, how long is the way to Pathankot or Chakki Bank? Blank. How far away is Khajar? Why do we have the temple there? Why is a tree called the Pandava trees? I was drawing blanks and I thought, let me search and research. So I started with meeting old people, young, the chowkidars who are a storehouse of knowledge, and my quest began to write this book on Dalhousie. Dalhousie is a quaint hill town, 80 kilometers from Pathankot, and it is spread over 5 hills, and the founding of it through the British came through a chance hunting expedition when the Raja of Chamba invited these Britishers who had come to survey the area for a possible sanatorium to come and see the hounds and the wolves and the cheetah that they thought they would find. And this guy, Dr. Clemenger and Colonel Napier, they just fell in love. And the 5 hills were taken for a paltry sum of less than 2,000 rupees, because that's what they excused from the protection that they've given to the Raja of Chamba. And they started building, but the Britishers knew how to build. So they started with the barracks, all sorts of timber, the wooden structures, and that's where my family stepped in. They could do with the Britishers, they could do with the locals, they couldn't do without traders and without those who would run the town. So my family of Plahas, they walked in 1880. We have a village, Surki Gala, from where the first brick kiln was started through Surki. Surki is the name of that red mitti there, and Gala is the valley. So the brick started, and my great-grandfather Hira Lal was the only guy without whom no timber auction could take place. Now I have an interesting feature that nobody was allowed to go on a horseback during the British period, no Indian. But my great-grandfather, he would always ride the horse, and our village was a little away from the cantonment areas. So he once walked into this Charing Cross, which is now known as Subhash Chowk, and this sergeant asked him, get off. So my great-grandfather, Hira Lal, just gave him a couple of expletives and kicked the horse, and was in Surki Gala before these people could follow. So that's how my great-grandfather was, and I think my fiesty nature comes from him. And I went to Mansarovar in the year 1996 at age 46, without oxygen cylinder, touched 19,800, and I think that's the hallmark of my physical strength. And with that, I take you to Dalhousie. Why I love Dalhousie. Dalhousie is where I've learnt the simple living, the simple people, and how we have moved in with them. I have learned through Sacred Heart, my college, the values of life, the discipline, the honesty, and how to treat everybody alike. We had to do work for the poor. We had to help them in their tasks. We would ourselves do labor. And most important was that we used to visit the church, the Gurudwara, and the R.S. Maj Mandir, as well as the churches all together. And my mother was responsible for this, because she used to say, Sab dharam ek hai. And I think I'm following from what Amarjeet said.
I'm just going to interrupt you here, Dr. Chadha. Speaking of timber, there is a very interesting story on how Pahari Wilson floated timber down. So, sir, would you please share with us?
Yeah, Pooja was going to push me into this one. Huh?
Apology. That is our subject session.
We're talking of the environment and of where I come from, where Chipko Andolan that was referred to began, and we have lopping, you know, it's a very green area where I come from, the Garhwal Himalayas and the Kumaon Himalayas. And we've had a lot of deforestation happen, and deforestation is not just us, independent India. It began with a man called F.E. Wilson, Frederick E. Wilson. Frederick E. Wilson's story is an amazing story. It's a story of rags to riches. He came up here as a deserter from the East India Company times and came to Mussoorie, became a school teacher. Funny how stories start with school teachers. But he became a school teacher.
You've taught at LBS?
Yeah, I taught at the, yes, I did. So he moved from, there he went to the bar. Funny how stories all end up in a bar. Huh? So he went to the bar, the bartender tells him, he says, "What are you doing teaching? You should be trophy hunting." Remember, it was very popular in those days to have trophies around your house. It's frowned upon today. And today you need to get a license under the Wildlife Act to have a trophy in your home. And in those days, of course, the railways were moving into India. Wilson was an entrepreneur. He said, "Hey, let's get this wood." No one could think about it up in those where I come from. There were no roads, remember? And so he chopped these trees, floated them down the Bhagirathi and the Alaknanda rivers, and collected them at Hardwar for free. And he decimated the Harsil Valley and destroyed a lot of forest. But railways, and like I said, railways were coming to India, you needed sleepers, and the empire was moving on. And the good news is, all those forests are green again. I've been there, I've trekked in that valley, the Bilangana Valley, the Bhagirathi Valley, and our trees always triumph. My theory is, nature always triumphs, one way or the other. I mean, we're too puny for what the forces that we deal with. One earthquake, the Kangra earthquake, if you remember, decimated up till Mussoorie. The water in the McKinnon Brewery, which we had up there, the equivalent of the dial thing here.
So the 20 books that you have done in over 25 languages, are they also on afforestation? What are your books about?
Lots. My books are Pooja, to answer that honestly, is that my books are basically about the Himalayas, and that's the area in which I specialize. And I spent a lifetime, I've had the good fortune of being able to live in the hills, and I come from the hills. My ancestors came from the hills, and that's a whole other story.
Thank you. We come back to Dr. Chadha. I believe Rudyard Kipling spent a fair share of his time at Dalhousie.
Before I talk about Rudyard Kipling, I'd like to mention that there was Chief Seattle in 1854 when trees were being chopped off in the name of development in America. He said, "To harm the earth is to heap contempt on the Creator." And I think this suffices for all of us to realize how important trees and maintaining and preserving our climate, preserving our environment, our natural resources is to us. So what Rudyard Kipling said was, he used to come there as an 18-year-old, from 18-year-old onwards, when his sister was convalescing from a disease, and he would say Dalhousie is the finest but the wettest, and it is also the dullest. So when somebody questioned him why the dullest, he said in terms of social connections, people don't come out of their houses because they enjoy the rains.
So what about the skirts don't get scullied?
Yeah. And then during the British period, when there were no roads, so the women had to come in their long skirts, the British women, and the locals were asked to pave the somewhat kacha roads with this mud. And why? Because the women with the prams and their skirts, so that skirts don't get sullied, and the prams and the parasols move on that region. I forgot to mention about my NGO. I'm working on Swachh Dalhousie and Clean Dalhousie, and we started before Prime Minister Modi started his NGO. We did 18 drives, we did rallies, we did marathons, and we tried to clean it to the extent possible, but then khads are not easy to clean. Now we have roped in Re-City, which Ganesh knows. They've done this in Mussoorie, and they are doing supported by the Municipal Council and supported by my NGO. We are trying to clean Dalhousie, starting with separating the dry and the wet waste, not only in terms of the garbage bins, but also where they dump it in the end, where a solid waste management plant is coming up.
Thank you so much. There is a notorious threesome that I have to tell you about. Have any of you been to Mussoorie, to Savoy? I'm sure a few of you have. So you would know of the Writers' Bar. There is a little history that I have to share. This is the notorious threesome, as they call themselves. Mr. Sally here, Ruskin Bond, and a gentleman called Nandu. And this story is one that I'm going to have him tell you himself.
Confession time this is. Yeah, we were all, I've had the good fortune of knowing Ruskin Bond for about 50 years of my life. And, even I remember when Khushwant Singh Ji was editing the weekly, he was the one who asked Ruskin to write about the Gadwalis. And that Ruskin's never looked back since that happened. And what do you want? Okay, we were young 40 years ago. Ruskin and I were pretty young, and we used to.
Bonding over alcohol.
It was no, like I said, it wasn't about the boozing. It wasn't about the cruising. It was about fellowship. We are social animals, you know. We need to chat with somebody, and and it was all about sitting down. And each one with our own different set of problems. Right. His monkey's on his back, his monkey's on his back. And none of us wanted all the monkeys on one man's back. So we'd sit down in the evening, our monkeys would rest, and we'd relax. That was the kind of life we had. Yeah?
So while we speak of monkeys on back, let's talk about, I'm sorry, the late Mr. Chadda, because Mrs. Chadda has a very nice, interesting story to share on her late husband.
Before that, I must tell you about the Miss Stiffel's Bar, which is still operative in Dalhousie, and where these Britishers, when they started losing out on many things, would sit and while quaffing chota pegs, would discuss about the decline of the British Empire. So that bar is operative. I welcome all of you to come and join us there. Nevertheless, I had the most charming husband, but the most important part was that when he proposed to me, he asked me, what sort of a boy do you want to marry? And I said, I don't know whom I'll marry, but I like to marry the guy who pampers me the most. And I am very proud to say that I was pampered for all the 42 years we were together. And
you also said dancing.
And of course, for the dancing, I told him, if you don't dance, then I'm not going to marry you.
I mean, her reason to say yes was and because he said
it was yes. Dalhousie. He fell in love with Dalhousie. Whether first with Dalhousie with me, I still don't know. But just outside the mall, there are two peaks called the Bride and the Bridegroom, which is very significant. And but the local people call it the Paap in the Punya Mountains. That is exactly what he was seeing when he proposed to me, and I think that's very romantic. And I am romantic by heart. I live life fully, and my book is also quite romantic.
Thank you, thank you. So as you leave here,
one more thing about the old times I want to tell you about is the artist and filmmaker Sarabjit Singh mentioned, this finds mentioned in my book. In 1920, he was telling that his great-grandfather was Sardar Makhan Singh, who convinced Major Bruce, the GOC of Lahore district, to allow Indians to come to Dalhousie. In their conversation, what did Mr. Major Bruce say? Sardar, you are a friend of the Raj and a grand man. A person like you, when in such salubrious climate of Dalhousie, thinks of good things and the prospects of the empire and the loyal subjects of the Raj. But these average Indians and ye badmash log, ye aadmi log sab badmash hai, in a climate like that of Dalhousie, will think only of sedition and rebellion. And for very, very long, he did not agree to allow Indians to come, either other Hindus, other than some aristocracy from Lahore and Jalandhar. He did not allow till our family was.
Thank you. So, as you leave here, we want to leave a part of all our hearts with you. We have a small presentation on the Writers' Bar, which we feel is apt for everyone sitting here, because you are here for the KSLF. And before I conclude, I would like to also read out a small poem by Shri Khushwant Singh Ji. When I remember all the friends so linked together, I've seen around me fall like leaves in wintry weather. I feel like one who treads alone, some banquet hall deserted, whose lights are fled, whose garlands dead, and all but he departed. The glory of the mountains will always go on and on to inspire the next. Thank you.
Lovely.
May we please at the New York Film Show and the Dada Saheb Phalke Film Festival.
This is the Writers' Bar. We used to come, I think, for what is called fellowship, for being with friends. It was not about losing, it was not about cruising. It was about being with friends. We enjoyed each other's company, and we would come and sit on those half-sprung sofas. And it used to be great fun to be here, because it was a strange phase in our lives. Nadu was going through the phase with the hotel, and we were going, those were, tourism hadn't picked up, the Indian middle class had not gone ballistic, and there was tough times for the hotel, but we would come in here and have a great time. We would at times carry our own booze, we'd bring our own eggs wrapped in old newspapers, we'd give it to the waiter, he'd take it to the kitchen, get a clean plate, put it on that, put all his namak and the salt and pepper on top, bring it back for us to eat, and it used to be fun. One time, Nandu happened to go to Singapore and he stayed at the historic Raffles Hotel. And the thoughts stole upon him gently like a thief at night that his bar must have a name. So he came back flush with this idea that let's give this bar a name. So we looked at him skeptically and said, Nandu, how can you compare the Raffles with us? He said, nay, bar is a bar. How can a bar be without a name? So we decided, we sat down, we were very reluctant to give it a name. And Nandu persevered. He said, no, we'll call it the Writer's Bar. Look, there are two of you, you're writer, nah. I said, I'm a typewriter, Ruskin's a writer. So he said, well, that makes, anyway, you also scribble Ganesh, so we can include you as a writer. So we started off, there were two writers. Then he said, why don't you include Jim Corbett? So we said, come on, give me a break. Jim Corbett was shooting in Garhwal. He would be hunting tigers down in leopards and tigers down in the Kumaon and Garhwal area. And he said, no, but he must have fought by sometime. His parents were married here. Jim Corbett's father, by the way, was a postmaster in Missouri and was a widower. And so was his wife. She'd lost her husband in the war. And so the two of them married up here. And it's true that Jim Corbett's parents were married at St. Paul's Church up in the Land of Cantonment. But Jim Corbett wasn't even born here. But anyway, we said, chalo, reluctantly, so we got a few names together. Then we said, he said, Pearl's Buck. I've got a picture with Pearl's Buck. She came here in 1960 to meet the Dalai Lama. We said, no, she didn't only meet the Dalai Lama. She came to Woodstock school as a chief guest. And so she came to Woodstock for this graduation ceremony as a chief guest. But she never had a drink in her life. She didn't write one word about this town. And her association was that she came to school, met the Dalai Lama in Happy Valley, full stop. Then, of course, we started fishing around for names. We realized that there were indeed people who did live in Missouri and did, write about the town. And starting with John Lang, the Australian-born novelist, he spent the last 5 years of his life in Missouri and wrote The Forger's Wife, Botany Bay, and of course he contributed to Charles Dickens's magazine Household Words in England and writes a beautiful essay in it on the Himalaya Club here and the flippant way we spent our lives. Of course, John Lang is famous for having defended the Rani of Jhansi in litigation with the British. John Lang was a bar at law and he died in Missouri and is finally buried, to be buried in the Campbellsburg Cemetery. Then there's Philip Mason. Philip Mason wrote several books. He was a commissioner of Garhwal. His actual name was Philip Putra, and he wrote his famous book, seminal work, is called Matter of Honor, about the civil services in India. So we included his name. Then we went down the list of Stephen Alter. Stephen Alter is, of course, American author, Missouri-born, and he has written some 20 books, a brilliant author. Then there's, you have John Masters. He spent his youth here with the Gurkha Rifles in Dehradun. And Peter Hopkirk I met he has a lovely sketch on of the coffee shop out there in his book, In Search of Kim. And it's a book in which he sets out looking for Kim. Peter Hopkirk made lovely sketches of the coffee shop, and so we said, let's include his name. Then you have Rudyard Kipling, the first British author to win the Nobel Prize. And he, of course, was in Missouri, and his contribution is about 4 lines of poetry to this town, but he has used that image that is embedded in the minds of all those who have seen these mountains. He describes the ramp of Missouri in Kipling. That ramp, that when you you sit in Dehradun and you look up at Mussoorie, it's like a gentle ramp into the sky. And he has Kim and the Lama start their journey into the mountains on the ramp of Mussoorie. Okay? And then you have, apart from that, Charles Allen. He wrote a book, he wrote several books on I think 6 generations of his family were in India. And one of his works that I like is Kipling Saab, in which he talks about Rudyard Kipling and the Indian connection. And then Nandu looked a little happy. He said, oh, we've got a few writers. So now where do we get the plaques from? So brass was too much work. So we went to the local coffin maker, and the local coffin maker, he made these on his lathe, and over the weekend, we hammered these plaques into the wall, had the local signboard writer write their names, and started off as a bit of a joke, but it is true that no hotel has a writer's bar as close to this. Ruskin Pond himself has done some 200 titles. You know, there is no match for Ruskin Pond's writing, and I always tease him that whenever future historians will write of this town, they shall say he was the Kipling of Mussoorie. I remember this Ukrainian couple that came with their little child. The little child was the height of the table, maybe 3-year-old or 2.5 years old, and the child was stumbling through the bar and hitting these tables narrow.
Thank you.
So, before we end, we've heard the bell already, that other than Rudyard Kipling and Raizada Hansraj and Pahari Gandhi and Pandit Nehru, Nanak Singh, Manjit Baba, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, it was Tagore who was most inspired by Dalhousie. I read one sentence from his reminiscences, in which he was a 12-year-old boy and used to walk up with his father to this area in Dalhousie. And he said, the terraced hillside as we went up were aflame with flowering spring crops. Every morning we made a start after bread and milk, and before sunset took shelter in the next staging bungalow. My eyes had no rest the livelong day. So great was my fear lest anything should escape them. Why, oh why had we to leave such spots behind, cried my thirsting heart. Why could we not stay on there forever? Tagore.
Thank you.
I think we should say a big thank you to Pooja for this wonderful...
No, thank you. It was a pleasure, and thank you all for listening to us so patiently and seeing our film. Do we have any questions? Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, since we have these 2 minutes when you are not asking us any questions, I just want to read an excerpt from my own book. Mountains with their lofty peaks, deep ravines and gorges, alluring flora and fauna, the infinite jungles, the swift flowing rivers have attracted the attention of poets and novelists, painters and musicians, nature lovers and photographers, geologists and geographers through the centuries. No wonder a romantic nature lover like me is hooked to Dalhousie.
Thank you.
Okay, next session. Minu, are you ready? Yeah. Yeah. I really want it.